Hello and welcome to another episode of Historically Speaking podcast. Today we have a very interesting theme and entity called Ram Vilas Paswan, the Weathervane of Indian Politics. It is written by my guest, Deputy Editor of The Hindu, Sobhana N Nair. Thank you, Sobhana, for taking out time and coming for this podcast.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
This is her book. It is very well written. The prose is almost fluid to the extent that it draws the reader into the characters of the book and the themes. She's done justice to the magnitude of the personality called Ram Vilas Paswan. He needs no introduction. The first question to you, Sobhana, is who do you think is the new Weathervane of Indian politics?
That's a bouncer. You sort of lobbed the bouncer at me, and I shall hit it back. I think from the present crop, I think Prashant Kishore, thankfully he has a political party. So considering he has been going around in this week itself, I think he has given half a dozen exclusive interviews predicting the outcome, predicting the results for June 4th. So I think him.
And why do you think Prashant Kishore as the new Weathervane? Why do you think he's the new Mausam Vibhag in that sense?
Mausam Vagyanik, because Paswan and Ram Vilas Paswan ji, very important thing that he told me during one of the interviews is that he's been derided all his life for shifting from one party, one alliance to the other, just so that he gets a cabinet berth. But his important sort of distinction that he wanted to make here is that he's never joined after an alliance has come to power. He said that I have always sort of picked my alliance before going into the elections. So in 2014 also, it is a few months, about February, March is when the Ram Vilas Paswan and his son joined the BJP. That is before the election. So as a Mausam Vagyanik or a Weathervane of politics, he could predict which way the political wind was going. I think in the present crop, if we have anybody who has sort of been doing that, is Mr. Kishore.
In writing your book, and you use that title as the Weathervane, do you think a Paswan is justified in getting that title, which his adversaries coined?
Yeah, so this is a title that was coined by Lalu Prasad Yadav, who has both been a friend and a foe for Paswan. They have all their life, they have collaborated, but also sparred. There are several episodes of that. And he did not mean this definitely as a compliment. He meant to deride this man who somehow always found his way to the Indian cabinet. Now, I have also been criticized after this book came out that I shouldn't have possibly used this title. And I take it's a fair point that many have raised. However, the fact that we cannot accuse him, and as I mentioned right at the very introduction, that many of his obituaries after his death spoke about him as a political opportunist, which is not entirely a very justified sort of description of a man who has spent 50 years in the front row of Indian politics. We all know how many, it's we are surrounded by political nomads. We have people who've been changing parties. In this very present election, at least 30 of the BJP candidates are people who have joined the party just a few weeks back. We have had people who've been arguing and hectoring BJP from the Congress dais just a day before and joining, wearing the saffron sash just a day later. So I think political opportunism should not be, it's not an allegation that should be lightly used for anyone. Having said that, I would still say that when I call him the Weathervane of Indian politics, I do not, and as he himself explained, that though this is a label that was given to him, as a form of derision. He did not see it as one. And therefore, I think it is justified that I use that in the title.
You refer, because you spoke about Lalu Prasad Yadav as sometime being his adversary and sometime being his friend. But there is one adversary who runs constant in your story, and that is Nitish Kumar, current Chief Minister of Bihar. Why do you think he was a constant adversary? What was the issue? Because you've done research, you've spoken to Paswanji, you've spoken to people who worked with him. What is the issue there? His son also is quite opposed to Mr. Nitish Kumar and his politics.
See, one thing is there, Nitish Kumar as a whole, I mean, as a person, he's a reticent person. There are, I guess, very, very handful of people that he really gets along with. I haven't, in all the years that we've seen Nitish Kumar as the Chief Minister, there aren't many friends that he has gathered around him. Now, with his, the problem, both of them disliked each other. Nitish Kumar, because he believed that Paswanji was not sort of sophisticated enough and was far too ambitious. And while Mr. Paswan disliked him for his very sort of standoffish attitude and occasionally very, very abrasive, very, very straightforward attitude. And as I have described in the book, right, the one of the last episodes, between the last interaction between Mr. Paswan and Nitish Kumar was also something which deeply hurt Mr. Paswan and left a very sort of deep imprint on him. And he was a very bitter man. And I talk about his last Rajya Sabha stint, where despite assurance from BJP, he is forced to go back and knock at Nitish Kumar's door and request, cajole, coax him to sort of come for JDU's support. And that is just minutes before the final deadline to file the nomination. And it is a very painful episode where he has to go and beg Nitish Kumar, and Nitish Kumar just scoffs at him. And even after Nitish Kumar comes and JDU supports and he is elected, Nitish Kumar makes sure that sort of he goes to the press and he sort of makes sure that he announces that how he has obliged LJP, who had just 2 MLAs in Bihar Assembly.
I don't know why Nitish Kumar would find ambition a problem in politics. It's not a problem in politics, certainly. You constantly refer to Ram Vilas Paswan branding himself as a Dalit leader, and then at some point as a secular politician, then at other point a coalition man who's ready to work with everyone. You have constant leaders even today rebranding and branding themselves. So what is consistent? Is it ideology or is it survival?
So I don't see any sort of differences in these 3 images that or brands as you have described it. He was a Dalit leader by the accident of his birth. And as I speak about it in the book, Dalit identity is not something that he recognized as a child, because when you're living among fellow Dalits, you don't realize that what this identity means. This is an identity that he slowly acquires as he steps out of his comfort zone, as he steps out of his home, he goes to the college, and later on steps into politics. Now, where he comes into being of a Dalit leader. Now, the second question is secular. Again, I would say that he is a product of a time when secularism was the normal. In fact, anybody else saying anything else was considered an aberration. And as he talks about his own childhood also, he lived in Dalits and Muslims have been natural allies across the country, and so that has never been a problem. Now, coalition avatar of his is he's a very again, it was he was we all are, not just him. We are all are people of our circumstances and people of the situation. The situation molds us. The circumstances mold us. He was active and at his very peak in a period from 77 when the coalition politics begins, and 89 by all standard is the highest peak that he achieves as the Labour Minister, bringing in the Mandal Commission report. So, man of circumstances, and he's always been a very, very affable person who's easy to get along with, a people pleaser. So, I think a perfect man to manage the various pulls and pushes of coalition politics.
Bihar politics has always been driven by the politics of caste, and fractured caste politics has led to fractured alliances. If you can see the current government, it has changed hand thrice in one tenure of 5 years. What do you think? Do you think they need a Mosam Vagyanik for just Bihar politics?
I'm sure. The reason I really admire that state is you can go anywhere. You can go to the smallest corner or the remotest region. Despite their daily inadequacies, you may not have road, water, health facilities, schools. But politics is one thing that does not lack in that state. And as far as fragmentization that you're speaking about, I firmly believe that too much of uniformity or too much of concentration of power in any one political party is just awful for the democracy. And having multiple castes, first of all, caste is a reality. We cannot shut our eyes at it.
Yes.
It is, even after so many years, there is no denying that a lot of benefits and a lot of resources are sort of portioned according to where you are in the caste hierarchy. Therefore, if the caste is a reality, there will obviously be interest groups guarding interests of each caste group, and which is not a bad thing. It actually, I would argue that this country badly needs a coalition government, because it is in the coalition governments that, because of the various pulls and pushes from various interest groups, that we have actually been able to come up with people-friendly laws. Laws that are not necessarily sort of forced down because a certain group thinks it is good, but because various interest group feel that we need it. Need-based laws.
You constantly refer to Ram Vilas Paswan ji's very cordial relationship with the media. Contemporary, we have either very good relationships with media or very fractured relationships with media. So, what do you think? How much of a media relationship between a politician and a journalist is okay, to the point of which the journalist remains neutral and the politician also maintains his identity, sanctity? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll begin. It's a very sort of very serious question, but let me begin with a very light anecdote. Something that I mentioned in the book also. He was unwell, and this was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
He was taken to the hospital, and as he's always been just a call away for journalists, and he in fact phoned me from the hospital bed, and I was worried, and I asked him, how are you and what are you doing in the hospital? Do you have COVID or something? No, I'm all right. I'm completely fine. I'm going to come back and we'll meet. We've not met in a while. And I'm just here for regular checkups. And this was not as if it was a call out of the blue. This was just a regular call. I mean, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, one expects him to call and, speak about various issues. But having said that, I think he was one of the last of the old school politicians. There are still a few left. I am very, very, as a journalist, I'm very, very wary of having a very close relationship with a politician, because I do not want the relationship to reach a stage where that person can tell me, don't do this story.
Yeah.
Or don't work on that story. The relationship should be warm enough that I can pick up the phone and ask the person a question, but it should not be so close that the person can stop me from doing something. But having said that, the old school politicians actually didn't mind if you wrote against them also, because they knew that it is coming from an objective place. And there have been times that I've written against him. I've asked him very tough questions in interviews, and he's been all right with it, because that is how our media was. It's only off late that we've seen that, criticizing, almost sounding very self-introspective here, but we've really sort of bowed down, and we're lying prostrate to the government, which is, I'm not sure, a good thing.
Okay. You referred to one aspect in the book, which is very interesting, which I found very fascinating, was that biographers, and I'll take it that you are his biographer, because there's no one who's written extensively on him. You refer to his relationship with Mrs. Reena Paswan, his second wife. And she's a constant companion in the story. She's a visible character in the words of the book. Like, I can read her also in the background, but still being in the forefront, which it is not, you see, and you refer to their constant friendship, his constant counsel with Mrs. Paswan. Do you give credit to Ram Vilas Paswan ji for it, or do you give it credit to the Times? Why did you think as a biographer you needed to capture that relationship? It was intrinsic aspect of the book. Why do you need?
I'll begin with a confession.
Yeah.
I was extremely squeamish about writing about his personal life, because I knew him in a professional manner, and I was not very sure. But then I was warned that if I don't write about his personal life, the book will fall short of.
Yeah.
It won't be a complete biography. So even before I decided to write on him, the warmth between Mr. Paswan and his wife was very, very evident for all to see. She's been a constant presence, whether it is press conferences or you're just dropping by for a cup of tea with him. She has been there, and although she's always been in the background, it's not as if she would come and impose herself, or she will give directions, or she will try to but it's a very healthy marriage, I would say, that the two had, and which was evident that each giving it the other the space, but even then sort of reaching out to each other every time they needed help, and it was very evident.
Do you think his marriage had a deep impact on him as a person and on his politics?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. He was... see his background. Where does he come from? He comes from a village called Shahar Banni, which at that point of time, in his childhood, during the monsoon months, was completely cut off from the rest of Bihar. So Bihar itself, even now, it is still sort of considered one of the laggard states. Back then, the situation was even worse. And even in a state like that, this particular village was cut off from the rest of the state.
Yes.
So he came from a very, very remote and area, a rural background, comes out of this kind of a setting. And here she is. She's obviously, as I mentioned, she's an ambitious person who wanted to become an air hostess. And for whatever reason, she doesn't pursue profession. But it is very clear that this is a meeting point of two minds, which not necessarily identical, but each sort of feeding the other their aspirations and their ambitions and their ideas, and sort of growing from there.
I like to add an interesting aspect which I read in this book, which is almost made me smile. What his father gave in his age, when whether he was the right age to contest elections. His father gave evidence against him because he was very upset that my son was supposed to become a deputy SP and he's cleared the exam, which Ram Vilas Paswan ji spoke about, which would have taken a great deal of effort given his humble origins. And here he is going for a very, very unpredictable world of politics. So his father was very unhappy. I found that very interesting aspect of the story, that his father actually gave evidence against him that would stop Ram Vilas Paswan ji from taking a plunge. But as you know, children can be very different. You being a mother and what plans we have set for them, they seldom tend to follow them. So I guess that. But it was an interesting aspect of the story, which made me smile, if not anything else. There is a legacy of Ram Vilas Paswan ji and the party he built. And that legacy in the middle was up for grabs. It goes through its ups and downs. His son and his wife are on the one side, and then there is his brother who says that I have done much of the spade work. I handled the party in Bihar. The rest of the family was in Delhi. I did much of the spade work. What do you think these tensions within these family-run parties actually have an impact on politics?
Yeah, so again, I would start with an anecdote. This is, if you recall, a few years back when Mulayam Singh ji was still alive, there was a similar and, in fact, uglier fight with the father in one corner of the ring and the son in the other corner. Father and the brother and the son. And it was a very, very, very public spat, and it was very ugly. Eventually, yes, the two sides made up, and Akhilesh is undisputed leader of the party, and he has established himself as such. In case of Ram Vilas Paswan's Lok Jan Shakti party, the reverse happened. While he was alive, he thought that he has portioned his legacy, and he has chosen his heir apparent. I mean, he was crowned as his heir. But it was after his death that the differences which had been there, which were bubbling under the surface, come up. And we see a very ugly split in the party, very, very public spat, each of them calling names and all of that. And they have still not come to, they've not been resolved. And in this election, we saw BJP sort of playing the arbitrator. Although there is a buzz that BJP could have been the force behind splitting them in the first place, and sort of we'll not go into the realm of speculation, but the BJP sort of playing the arbitrator said that Chirag is still, he holds the legacy, and therefore the seat of Hajipur, which Ram Vilas Paswan ji has won multiple times in the past, Chirag is contesting Lok Sabha elections from there. But obviously, Chirag is a different political animal from his father. While Ram Vilas Paswan always centered his politics around Dalit issues right from the beginning. It's a question whether he was enough Ambedkarite or not, or
you would have different brands of Dalit politics. That's all right. Yes.
But Chirag, if you were to hear his speeches and remarks, he says, I don't believe in this caste divisions. I don't believe in this.
It's almost utopian.
Yeah, which is also, in a way, he's being candid, because he was born and brought up in Delhi in a very sort of comfortable situation. So for him to sort of say that I'm a Dalit politician would also be a little fake. So in a way, in his position, he's correct. But obviously, if he doesn't identify caste as a reality, then do we have a Dalit party in Bihar? That is a question. In this current election also in Lok Sabha, see, what are the two or three enduring themes of Lok Sabha elections 2024? One of in the first few phases, we saw this whole narrative about BJP altering the constitution and doing away with the reservation.
Yes.
And this was a widespread fear among Dalits.
Yes.
And while this fear is there, unfortunately, in both UP and Bihar, we see a vacuum in Dalit leadership.
Yes.
In UP, BSP has been on a decline. And in Bihar, the only party that possibly can claim the mantle for a Dalit party is Lok Jan Shakti party, the two sort of parts of this party. But the tallest leader of that party is saying that the caste is not a reality, and he does not believe in caste-based politics. Therefore, there is a huge vacuum, and we are in a time where it's a ripe ground for a new Dalit leader.
I find it interesting that you talk about him, that in his time, Ram Vilas Paswan ji anointed Chirag as his successor. We've seen that with Nidhi also. There was a clarity where while he lived, Stalin would take over and Alagiri would have to step into the background, or whether you have it with the Chautalas in Haryana, because I'm from Haryana, or whether you have it with the Samajwadi Party, of course, an area of interest is because of UP politics. Again, there Mulayam Singh Yadav anoints Akhilesh as the CM of Uttar Pradesh, or it is RJD in Bihar, where you have Tejasvi Yadav chosen over his brother Tej Pratap by Lalu Prasad Yadav as head of...
and the daughters also.
And the daughters also. So do you think succession playing out prior to the patriarch's demise is better off than succession later?
Okay, there is no simple yes or no answer for this question.
Yeah.
I believe, and the history would back me in this case, all the leaders, leadership cannot be gifted.
Yeah.
It has to be acquired.
Or snatched.
Yeah, it has to be acquired, it has to be snatched. The takeover will be slightly violent. There has to be a struggle, and the struggle should be seen by the people. It's not that you're struggling within a room and you've acquired the leadership. That's not how you become a leader. The people should realize that you have had certain amount of struggle and that you have acquired this leadership. And in each of these cases, if we see Akhilesh Yadav, it was disputed. They went up to election commission, but then he proved himself repeatedly through various elections. Tejasvi Yadav similarly has been a crowd puller.
Yes.
His rallies are practically attended by lakhs and lakhs of people. And he has established himself as a clear lead among the bunch of Lalu Yadav's children. Similarly, Stalin also has established himself as an administrative, he's shown his administrative acumen. So leadership cannot be given, it cannot be gifted. So whether the succession happens while the leader is alive or whether it happens later, whoever takes over has to show struggle.
My final question to you is, what do you think will Chirag Paswan do with his father's legacy? Does he want to make his own legacy? Do you see him as very individualistic, that he says, no, what I create is my own and it has to be new, something different from my father? Or I can draw snippets from my father and try to build my own? Or I completely revamp it? Because you've had interactions with him, you've covered him as a journalist, you've looked at him and his trajectory during elections. What is Chirag Paswan trying to do? Because he says, I am Hanuman for the Prime Minister. So he is giving himself roles. And so where do you see Chirag Paswan and his politics?
Yeah, so Chirag Paswan and Ram Vilas ji, as I earlier said, they're politically very different people. Chirag has learned at his knee. At Ram Vilas Paswan's, he has, in fact, Chirag emerged out of the shadows very quickly. It's not like he had a long learning period. Of course, he was born and brought up in that house. But it's only when you start doing something on a daily basis that you acquire the practical knowledge of it. There are primary ways in which the two leaders are different. First of all, Ram Vilas Paswan had a very national outlook.
Yes.
He never wanted to be pigeonholed in Bihar.
Yeah.
And that, in many ways, I question whether that was the right strategy, and could he have become a greater leader had he concentrated on Bihar and developed a more sort of, not just a Paswan identity, but a Dalit leader identity in Bihar, and sort of grown beyond being a 5%, a person who collects only 5% votes in a state. Chirag, on the other hand, has a very clear vision ahead of him.
Okay.
He does not see himself as a Lutyens Delhi politician, especially after his father's death. He's sort of has laid down the path for himself, and his sort of target is the Bihar Chief Minister's
Okay.
chair.
Okay.
And I think he's very clear-eyed about it.
Yeah.
So if you see, all his campaigns are about Bihar, and that is primary reason why he's been targeting Nitish Kumar, because you raise your stature by targeting the tallest leader there. And I mean, that state at present, after Lalu Prasad Yadav, who's in a semi-retirement, Ram Vilas Paswanji's death, Nitish is the last of the law and the tallest leader. So that is, it's very clear what at Chirag.
So we almost see a reversal, because you mentioned twice, or at least one time, where he solidly became very close to becoming the Chief Minister of Bihar, Ram Vilas Paswanji, and nobody could understand as to why he would be still eyeing the Prime Minister's chair. That's not a bad ambition to have either. But I hope in life we also had such choices between Chief Minister and Prime Minister, and we were spoiled for such choices, and we had to make such picks. It would make life much more interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shobhana, for taking out time. May people who have not got their hands on the book may read the book and learn a little bit about the times of coalition politics, the humble origins of Ram Vilas Paswan, and how it shaped his politics and how it impacted national politics. Thank you so much for coming for this podcast, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.